The basic arc of a Metroid game is a journey of emotions, isolation, anxiety, empowerment, then triumph. Metroid pioneered an entire genre with this rock-solid formula, and even if the original game hasn't aged amazingly, the impact of the design philosophy is still felt today. Metroid Zero Mission is a top-to-bottom remake of the very first game in the Metroid series. And even though it was developed for the Game Boy Advance, Zero Mission defied my expectations, being far more than just a Game Boy game. The completion criteria also totally changed the way this game is played, from playthrough to playthrough, making this one of the most satisfying Metroids ever. It's time to complete Metroid Zero Mission.
Here comes a new challenger! Yes! Danger!
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Every February, we pick a theme for the games that I'll be doing for the month. And this year, it's all about remakes, remasters, and ports. Metroid Zero Mission is a reimagining of the very first Metroid game on the NES, a game I've avoided personally for a very long time, because I found it scary as hell, in a ton of different ways. From the first comic book style cutscene, Metroid Zero Mission feels bigger than what a handheld game would suggest. It's what happens if you take the best parts of Super Metroid and layer them into the most interesting elements of the first game. Zero Mission is incredibly deep and feels like a full-fledged console release, and I mean that with no disrespect to the legendary Game Boy Advance system. My first experience with the Metroid series was Super Metroid, basically a perfect video game. After playing that, I got excited about trying to knock out the rest of the series. But when I played the first Metroid game on the NES, I was startled by how much it legitimately terrified me. The game was difficult and incredibly vague in its objectives. I understood the central loop of 2D map exploration, item gathering, fighting aliens, powering up, and eventually escaping the planet. But I had a hard time getting through the world because I was used to a more streamlined and user-friendly Super Metroid. I mean, Metroid 1 didn't even have a map. It wasn't just the mechanics that scared me, it was the world design. Metroid is dark and mysterious. It feels unknowable, truly alien. Compared to the brightness of Super Mario Bros. Or The Legend of Zelda, Metroid is an NES game that really made me feel the loneliness and just plain indifference of space. I put it down and never looked back when I was younger. It weirdly scarred me and still makes me uneasy to this day. Enter Metroid Zero Mission. Released in 2004, pretty much the heyday years for the GBA, Zero Mission takes the same basic story and structure of the first game and adds some new frills. Samas Aran is still a badass bounty hunter. She shows up on Zebes, and yes, I'm still not sure how to pronounce that, to exterminate Metroids and destroy the Mother Brain. The same basic plot, but with a totally reimagined, far-reaching scope. This remake puts the player in Samus's head more than the first game, for a better narrative effect. Most Metroid games have a few different endings depending on how you go through the game. Zero Mission is similar, but puts a few twists on the formula to make completing this game extremely satisfying and memorable. The restrictions I had to place on myself to fully complete this game seemed limiting at first, but ended up paying off in surprising and awesome ways, even if getting there was pretty exhausting. To consider this game completed, I had to fill out the gallery in the options menu. Sounds simple enough. I unlocked a different cool image for each ending I reached, and the first few weren't all that bad. But as I drilled down into what benchmarks I had to hit for each ending, I felt that old Metroid anxiety creeping back up in me again. All Metroid games feature a collection aspect, and Zero Mission is no different. As I went through the game, I upgraded Samus with tools and weapons that made traversal and battle easier. Each energy tank or missile expansion counts towards the completion percentage, eventually adding up to 100% completion. Playing the game Completionist style always scratches that itch and hits that sweet dopamine spot in my brain. Metroid as a series is also famous for its speedrunning component. While the game rewards a careful and exhaustive approach, it's also designed to be blitzed through like your speed boosters on full blast. Zero Mission follows this tradition, rewarding players who beat the game in record time. As someone who chose to speedrun Samus Returns before anyone else had the opportunity to, trust me when I say this aspect is one of the most rewarding and frustrating parts of the Metroid franchise. On top of all of that, Zero Mission has difficulty modes: easy, normal, and hard, which are unlocked after beating the game once on normal. Hard mode makes it so that Samus takes more damage from enemies, and also makes any upgrades half as effective. It's incredibly punishing. I love a challenge, but even I felt pretty wrecked after hard mode. Now here's where things start to get sticky. The gallery images unlocked are determined by different combinations of all three of those factors. I had to beat it quickly, slowly, completionist style, non-completionist style, and buckle in on hard mode with less than 15% of items collected. And that's not even counting the between 2 to 4 hour runs on various difficulty levels. I had to have my producer make an extremely streamlined chart like I had before in Samus Returns. At first, this overwhelming list of things to do was more paralyzing than a shot from the ice beam. This remake adds a ton of content to the game, way more than just a graphics update for the first Metroid. There's even an entirely new area of the map that Nintendo added after the Mother Brain fight, which is where the first game ended. This is where the titular Zero Suit actually shows up. And you're forgiven if you forgot that it's actually in this game before it appeared in Smash Bros. Brawl. Was I the only one that thought that? Zero Mission even brings in some favorite items from Super Metroid that weren't featured in the original. Touches like this change up the gameplay even more, and I loved having to constantly adjust my playstyles. Even the character models for Ridley and Kraid are imported straight from Super Metroid to tie the games together even more. Speaking of which, what is even Ridley? Like, obviously a space dragon, but does he have intelligence? Can he speak English? Does he speak the language of the old people? He flies a spaceship, but also in the space, he built a robot? How does he communicate to Mother Brain? Does he have children? How many children does... I know I bring up Super Metroid a lot when I talk about these games. Call it a reflex, if you will. But Zero Mission does a great job of using the legacy of Metroid as a series to influence its gameplay. I couldn't get enough of how the game used itself as a reference, leading to some incredible moments of restrictive yet exciting gameplay. A strange thing happened to me when I started making my way through Metroid Zero Mission. As I started finding items like the iconic Morph Ball and Screw Attack, I realized that I was beginning to conquer my initial fear of Metroid. Sure, there are major differences between the first game and the remake, especially in regards to brightness and ease of use, but what Zero Mission did was turn fear into excitement, as it gave me more interesting tools than ever before. Zebes became a puzzle box the more I explored it. The original Metroid required players to basically bomb every square inch of the map in the hopes of finding out where to go next. Zero Mission makes navigation and item gathering slightly easier, which I super appreciated. There isn't an arrow on screen telling you where to go, but the player can find Chozo statues that guide Samus in a general direction. Nintendo nailed it with this little quality of life change. Once I started trying to fill out the endings gallery, the most interesting, challenging, and rewarding parts of the game became very clear. It's not just about defeating the bosses and making it out before the big explosion. It's about teaching yourself how to play a new type of game to reach each ending. Completing a general untimed 100% run requires a completely different mindset and skill set than knocking out this game's speedrun. And I had to access a completely different part of my brain to do the 15% or less hard mode playthrough. asking a completionist to deliberately skip upgrades that are lying out in the open, begging to be collected, is absolutely mind-blowing. Since I had to essentially do 8 separate playthroughs of this game, I learned to appreciate different aspects of each playthrough. But Gerard, you might say, Zero Mission only has 3 save slots. That's right, everyone. I had to do something that genuinely pained me. Overwrite save files to see every single ending. But honestly, this didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. And if you really want to unlock everything in this game, you have to do it eventually. For the true completionist run, I loved exploring the environment and testing the limits of all the abilities, including those that were not present in the original game. Almost every room has a secret waiting to be uncovered, and I felt smart and satisfied uncovering what was hidden. All this exploration and secret uncovering becomes insanely important once I shifted mindsets to the speedrun, the game that becomes an exercise in path optimization and memorization. I had to learn where to go, when to go, and how to avoid backtracking as much as possible. Something that once again requires a total reset of how I play Metroid games. The genre makes backtracking a staple, and to retrain my brain to avoid doing that was hard, but also made me feel like I was learning a brand new skill. Doing the speedruns also reinforced how important it is to learn advanced techniques like the bomb jump and the Super Metroid style wall jump. If you can master these difficult moves that the game never explicitly teaches you, you can access certain items way out of sequence, shaving off a ton of time. And when it comes to the speedrun, every minute matters, and the execution becomes just as important as the knowledge. Learning how to do the moves perfectly every time is the name of the game for a completionist speedrun. Now, the most unique challenge Zero Mission has to offer is definitely the 15% and under run. Each upgrade or item in Samus's arsenal basically counts as a percentage point, and there are some key path items that you cannot avoid and will take up most of your inventory. But once you know what upgrade Samus absolutely needs, I could pick up and choose the rest to suit my own playstyle. What started out as dread turned into a form of self-expression that I loved. It was almost like I was making my own custom Samus. Do I focus on firepower and find more missile upgrades? Make defense a priority and gather a few more precious energy tanks? Or get 1 or 2 more traversal options to make navigation just that much easier? No matter what I chose, I had a nagging feeling that I was making the wrong choice. Everything felt consequential and weighty, and I loved every second of it. Now, I do want to add that Metroid Samus Returns was very, very difficult for me personally. I never played Metroid 2 on the Game Boy, and the remake was so different. And statistically speaking, Metroid Zero Mission, in terms of completion, matches up very closely with that of Samus Returns. So what makes my experience with Metroid Zero Mission different than Metroid Samus Returns, with the exception of a 3DS game versus a Game Boy Advance game? The biggest thing was the idea of being the completionist in the time frame that I had. In the case of Metroid Samus Returns, I essentially created my own speedrunning guide, on top of creating an insane video within just a couple of days of production. I essentially became a speedrunner on a game that hadn't been sped-run before, and that pressure alone changed my entire perspective. Whereas with Zero Mission, I knew everything going into it, and I feel that that very dramatically changes my personal experience, both as a gamer and as a YouTuber. Though I did find that boss battles were so much more incredibly difficult. I had to be spot on with my super missile attacks or suffer the consequences. Once again, I was taught another empowering skill that for us completionists, we should always have: patience. In a game that places such an emphasis on speedrunning, I did not expect that patience would really be showcased as a virtue here. Each run made me consider the game as a whole and appreciate how much it had been designed with the player in mind. The game is designed to be completed in under 2 hours, but also feels complex enough that doing so feels like a real accomplishment. Most Metroid games make you feel underpowered in the beginning, and then like an unstoppable force by the end. Zero Mission still empowered me, but differently. For the low percentage runs, I really feel connected to a problem-solving Samus, who had to make do with what she had in front of her. For the speed runs, the same deal. I felt her mastery in returning to the planet where she was raised. Of course she would know how to get from one side of the planet to the other. Overall, the darkness of space did not get me down, and I was able to finally conquer my fears. Samus and I overcame hostile aliens and made it out alive. We're both survivors and live to fight another day. The ending screens and gallery images became a testament to how I felt for each completed run. Seeing Samus decked out in her armor or looking more relaxed in her two-piece suit was satisfying. Seeing these static images, I remembered the challenges I overcame and the puzzles I had to solve each and every time, though I wish there were a bit more. Having completed several Metroid games many times, I just might be feeling a little burnt out on being given so little after doing so much. Completing hard mode also unlocks a sound test, which is a cool sort of throwback bonus. In case I ever needed ambient space music, I now know I can fire up Zero Mission anytime. There's another image gallery that's unlocked if you link up with another Game Boy Advance and a copy of Metroid Fusion. Fortunately, I had a copy lying around. This is a cool bonus, but it's not really tied to any gameplay stuff. I like that the images in the Fusion gallery provide a little more lore for Samus, and I just think the concept of linking stuff together with cables is tight. Going through the game this many times was fun, and I enjoyed all the variety that the different runs brought, but I definitely started to feel a little drained by the end. Developing such a strong relationship to a game can be exhausting, and even though Metroid and I get along great, I was craving some space by the end. Fortunately, there's another gift. Best and most rewarding of all, beating Zero Mission on any difficulty unlocks the original Metroid. Now this is an amazing completion bonus. It's not tied to hard mode or any crazy timed run or anything. It's a great way for players who never had the chance to experience the classic to do so. For me, it felt like a full circle experience to come back to the first game after mastering this remake. Though the original is still vague, mysterious, and incredibly difficult, I didn't feel scared anymore. Zero Mission feels huge and rewarding all throughout. Overall, there were 8 separate run-throughs completed, some easy, some incredibly difficult, and all very rewarding. 8 different gallery images earned, my rewards for each run, 100 upgrades found, from classics like the Super Missile to newly essential moves like the Power Grip. Each upgrade was welcome. I suffered about 15 deaths overall, not too bad for going in completely blind. 30 hours of total playtime spent, way more than I would have thought from a remake of an NES game. And one classic game revisited, with a significantly lower fear factor. Completing Metroid Zero Mission was incredibly satisfying, but also pretty damn brutal. It takes the most memorable aspects of the first title and mixes them in with some of the best aspects of other Metroid titles. The result is a remake that feels more than a Game Boy game or NES game, and it challenged me to play it in several totally different ways. It's an incredible remake, but unless you're a fan of the full-on Metroid franchise, completing the gallery may be up in the air whether or not you want to do it or not. However, when it comes really to the minutia of completing Metroid Zero Mission, there are a few things about it that I really love. The gallery is kind of a hit or miss thing with people, but for me, it's all about the endings. You feel incredible when you conquer all of these insane tasks. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of complete it.
Complete it!
That's all the time we have for today, guys, so please, as always, let me know what you thought of today's episode somewhere on the internet. Hey, if you like the show, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, and hey, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/thecompletionist. We have a podcast now that's happening 2 times a month, as well as a board game show called Board Boys. The first episodes are free. You can go check them out right now. Guys, I've been Gerard, and I'll see you next week for another brand new episode of The Completionist. Bye!